I think we have a long way to go before films accurately and respectfully represent mental illness in a way that uplifts and inspires its audience. And until then, film after film is going to come out and inaccurately portray mental illness because most directors and writers who make these movies don't have experience with mental illness and don't know enough people or all the counseling and information in the world is never going to truly help them understand what it's like to live with that mental illness. And I would hope that year after year we would get closer to accurately representing mental illness a little bit better. But until then, it doesn't bother me too much when film after film comes out kind of just insulting mental illness or just coming across as insulting and very ignorant. It's annoying, but it's not a crime, and I think people are allowed to make offensive films based on ignorance. I think it becomes even more obnoxious when these films get awarded with Oscars or for being such amazing, inspiring films when they have such poorly written representation of whatever community they're not a part of. And a really good example of this that isn't about mental illness but fits this description is Emilia Perez, which is a really bizarre musical that came out less than a year ago. It's about a Mexican crime lord who evades the law by becoming a woman, and by the end of the film becomes this really inspiring figure who helps other people affected by the cartel, even though he should be tried and convicted for killing people, but whatever. But anyways, so that film, it was written by a French guy, and it feels kind of like a Mexican crime fan fiction, and it seems like he has kind of no idea what he's representing, and all the actors he chose to portray each character are not Mexican, and their Spanish accent is terrible, or their Spanish has a terrible accent and does not sound good or natural at all. And obviously, a lot of people were offended, especially the entirety of Mexico, which is the last country where it was released, interestingly enough. And I think the French filmmaker was well within his right to make this terrible monstrosity of a film and put it out there if that's what he truly desired. I think it's a little bit irritating that, or actually, I think it's just kind of insane that this film won Best Musical of the Year. It sounds like whoever voted for Best Musical of the Year for this film did not actually see the film, but read the synopsis and was like, ooh, it's about ethnic people and trans people, so this probably has to be a good movie, therefore we're going to give it Best Musical of the Year, because it's also a musical, apparently. I haven't listened to any of the songs, but it's a musical, and it's about really controversial subjects, so it's probably good. But yeah, it's probably one of the worst musicals I have ever heard, especially recently. But anyways, the main thing I wanted to talk about in this video was how mental illness is portrayed and how it's usually not portrayed well in film and usually comes across as offensive. And I don't really think that's such a big deal and a reason to get so worked up. But I do think that one thing to get pretty upset about is when treatment for mental illness is portrayed and it's the wrong kind of treatment and it's actually harmful instead of helpful and has been medically proven over time to be obsolete and actually dangerous, such as in Sia's 2022 inspiration porn flick about autism called called Music. So Sia, the Australian pop singer, made a film totally misrepresenting autism called Music, about a girl named Music who has autism and is nonverbal and very developmentally delayed. And a couple times in the film, she is pushed onto the ground and kind of spread out and has an adult like sitting on top of her and holding her down and pinning her down to stop her from having a meltdown. And that has been medically proven to be harmful, and one patient was actually killed because he was put into this position. So I think when films want to do things like that, they, again, can, as long as they have a medical disclaimer at the beginning that the methods shown for treatment in this video are obsolete and proven to actually harm patients, such as if a film wanted to include electroshock therapy as a solution or a lobotomy as a solution. I think a film like that should also have a medical disclaimer so that we don't perpetuate this idea that actually hurts people, that this is a good solution to this illness. But I watched a couple of films recently that portray complex psychiatric conditions that most people don't understand in a pretty typical, ignorant, offensive way that didn't really come across as harmful. It just came across as kind of dumb and lazy and romanticized. And the two films I'm going to talk about today are Words on Bathroom Walls and Turtles All the Way Down. So Words on Bathroom Walls is about a boy named Adam with schizophrenia, and the tendency with portraying schizophrenia by people who don't understand the condition and do very little research is to create or to write a lucid character who just is able to see his imaginary friends, because the idea of schizophrenia comes across as, ooh, it's somebody who can see things that aren't really there, that's kind of cool and mysterious, when in actuality schizophrenia is a very complex and misunderstood condition about people who have a chemical imbalance in their brain that makes them unable to grasp reality, or have delusions of grandeur or delusions of paranoia about themselves and others, or that they're going to be hurt or attacked in some way. And I think this is represented very well, or described very well, by somebody who made a guest appearance in the podcast Blocked and Reported. I do not remember this individual's name. If you remember, let me know. But delusions and hallucinations are both features of both schizophrenia, but also occasionally bipolar disorder. And this individual who made a guest appearance on Blocked and Reported specified that conditions like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, which could be classified as psychotic disorders, they both include features of capital I insanity versus lowercase I insanity. And the way this guy distinguished it is lowercase I insanity is when you respond irrationally to normal things around you, such as wanting to end your life or self-sabotage or self-harm in response to normal struggles coming up in work or at school, or conflict arising in relationships. And that is not to demean people who react like this to normal things. I fall into this category as well. I am lowercase I insane. And then the distinction is with capital I insane. It's people who suffer delusions, or basically people who respond rationally to irrational events, such as in this guy's case, he has bipolar disorder, and during a manic or psychotic breakdown, when he was his bipolar disorder was left untreated, he had delusions that his neighbor was spying on him and conspiring to kill him, so he planned on killing his neighbor first. And it would make sense that if you felt like you were under attack and you needed to protect yourself, that is an action you might take, but it was irrational to believe that his neighbor did feel this way about him and was going to hurt him. But anyways, schizophrenia is often not written well, and just kind of, especially in Words on Bathroom Walls, Adam, who has schizophrenia, is kind of just written as this mysterious, sullen boy who can see his imaginary friends. And he has three delusions, hallucinations. He has three hallucinations who come in the form of three human people. And I specify human people because, first of all, visual hallucinations are not that common for schizophrenia. And second of all, visual hallucinations come in the form of all shapes and sizes and all kinds of different creatures, and usually ones that don't make sense. Somebody I can think of who talked about her schizophrenia and her visual hallucinations, I don't remember her last name, but her name is Cecilia, and she's done several TED Talks. So if you look up I Am Not a Monster, Schizophrenia, Cecilia, you'll see her really good video, and she talks about how her hallucinations were very nightmarish and came in the form of huge spiders, or a clown, or a girl who didn't look totally human who was trying to stab her. But this boy's hallucinations just seem like quirky imaginary friends. So there is this yoga teacher, spiritualist lady, holistic lady kind of thing. There is the protector who wields a bat and is bald and wears a denim vest. And then there's Joaquin, who is basically just Roderick Heffley and played by the actor who played I was going to say Robert Patton, but I realized Robert Patton is somebody else. No, it's the actor who played Roderick Heffley in the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies, and he basically just acts like a Roderick Heffley who lives inside Adam's head. But another issue that rubs me the wrong way with films that inaccurately portray psychiatric disorders is that they often imply that the treatment for a psychiatric disorder is ultimately a relationship. Now, Words on Bathroom Walls does show that Adam's treatment comes in the form of medication and therapy and support from his parents, which is all good, but the overarching theme of the film seems to be his relationship with this obnoxious Mary Sue, author self-insert, too smart for school Maya. And his relationship with Maya seems to be the instigating action that makes him get better over time. This movie overall is also just a very YA fantasy where at the end of the film, Adam is kicked out of his school for having a psychotic breakdown and assaulting one of the teachers. And at the very end of the film, he disrupts the senior graduation because he's a senior. And he disrupts the senior graduation by saying, "Hey, I have schizophrenia, and if you can't accept that, you guys are bad, and I'm never coming back to this school again." And then everybody stood up and clapped. Yeah, it was not a very good movie. I would say what I did appreciate about the movie, in that it was accurate about just mental illness in general, is Adam is so afraid to get into a relationship because he's afraid his mental illness will hurt the people closest to him, so he doesn't want to get close to people. This is something that also happens in the film Turtles All the Way Down, which is about a girl the same age, 17, named Asa, who has OCD. And this manifests in her being afraid of germs and bacteria and washing her hands way too much, popping her blisters, and swallowing hand sanitizer. And again, this really rubs me the wrong way, as somebody with OCD, to have OCD constantly misrepresented as somebody who's kind of neurotic about organization, or somebody who's afraid of germs, because OCD is not always about being afraid of germs. I think if you were to, in my experience, when I've looked up OCD signs and symptoms, or what is OCD, it says it's obsessive compulsive disorder with recurring obsessions or intrusive thoughts, followed by compulsions to remedy these anxieties, such as washing hands. Washing hands is almost always given as an example of solutions to OCD. Washing hands is almost always given as an example of the main OCD compulsion, which is not true. I watched a really good video by this woman who, again, I forgot her name, but she is in a video on the channel Special Books by Special Kids, where she talks about living with OCD and emetophobia, where her obsession is that she's gonna puke, or she doesn't want to puke. Emetophobia, by the way, is fear of vomiting, or vomit, or just vomit in general. And her fear, or her obsession, is that she's gonna vomit, and her compulsion is completely unrelated things that she does in order to allay this anxiety that she's going to puke. And some of the things that were implied is that she wouldn't touch garbage, or she wouldn't touch certain foods, or she might eat certain foods and then the obsession would come out and then she would just leave the food there and not be able to touch it. And, that's not compulsive hand washing, and that's not being overly organized. That's a completely different thing, and it is ultimately responding to an obsession with an irrational compulsion that has nothing to do with it, but your brain is telling you that this is going to fix your obsession or take your obsession away. And anyways, the film portrays Asa as a girl with intense germophobia, and I think it would have been more interesting if the film was just about a girl with intense germophobia that got in the way of her life and her relationships, but it wasn't. They called it OCD. And similar to Words on Bathroom Walls, Asa has a similar strained relationship with her mother that Adam does, where they both feel infantilized by their overprotective parent trying to take care of them with their condition, and they feel like they're not allowed to be an adult because their parent will always see them as a child because of their mental illness. And, the plot of Turtles All the Way Down looked like it could have been interesting. It looked like it was about to be a murder mystery, but then that was sidestepped for a really dumb relationship that happens in the movie that doesn't even end well. Ultimately, both the girl and boy split ways. But Asa ends up in a relationship with this boy she has no chemistry with, named Davis, and he is just the most cringe YA romance opposite written type character. And he is so comically rich that he has a private jet that he uses to fly Asa to her dream school to meet and talk to her dream professor. And then she has an unrealistically, philosophically deep conversation with this dream professor of hers. And then she goes back home, and then ultimately she and Davis realize they would not work out because Asa is too afraid of being physically affectionate with another person because of, again, the fear of bacteria. And Davis doesn't want a relationship with a girl he can't be physically affectionate with. I think another thing that bothered me about the film was that it seems that Asa is very well read and very intelligent, and yet she doesn't seem to understand that we have more helpful bacteria in our bodies than harmful, and that it's good and necessary to have bacteria in our bodies. So being irrationally afraid of bacteria specifically and not, say, viruses or pathogens more specifically, that would make more sense. But it's clearly like a book written about an intelligent person by an idiot. No offense. I'm sure it was well written. Maybe. There was another issue that I had with this girl another thing is that when Asa ends up in the hospital because of a car accident, she is terrified because she feels like the hospital is super contaminated, which, again, I feel like if she were as well-read and intelligent as the movie portrays her as, she would know that hospitals are more sterilized than your own home, so she would actually be safer in a hospital than in her own home with an infection. But yeah, so while Asa does not end up with the boy by the end, the boy Davis kind of acts like a manic pixie dream boy who sweeps into her life and gives her lots of exciting adventures and then leaves her life, but she is left feeling hopeful for the future because this was able to happen to her. And also at the end of the movie, I'm just realizing Asa's best friend gives her this ridiculously inspirational speech like, I see into your future, I see you getting into a relationship, I see you having kids, I see it being a bigger struggle for you than other people because of your condition, but I see you powering through, especially with the help of your friends. It was kind of a dumb film. Objectively speaking, it was not the best written film, and I think it just came out last year. But yeah, it was an indie film, I think based off a novel that I haven't read, but I have heard of. So yeah, let me know if you know of any films where mental illness or developmental disorders were portrayed accurately, or let me know if you think of any other films that fall into the category I've just described, or let me know if you've seen any of these movies and what your thoughts are. Okay, bye!